Schauberger is a physicist who created a device called a repulsine, which used vortex generation to actually create lift and maneuverability of disc-shaped objects. The interesting thing about his techniques is that Schauberger actually believed that we were doing things wrong in physics. He said that birds did not fly, they were flown, and fish did not swim, they were swum. So all you really had to do is tap into the forces that existed in the ether around us, and you could actually generate movement and theoretical performance like a flying saucer.
Schauberger invented a number of unusual items and devices, including a flying saucer kind of device that worked as a vortex, sort of flying tornado vortex, similar to a gyro also. It's quite possible that an aircraft, particularly a flying saucer kind of aircraft, could actually be powered by water as the vortex.
Schauberger was a self-taught genius who was then commandeered by the SS to work for them during the war. He did create disc-shaped craft. They were tested.
The question is, were aliens helping the Germans develop technology? And the fact is the Germans are very bright guys. The Germans were brilliant, absolutely brilliant engineers. And it looks like there's a trace all the way back to 18th century Prussia, where they were working on and interested in developing technologies, airship technologies and anti-gravity technologies. So I don't think that the aliens are required for the Germans to have achieved the things that they achieved technologically. It wouldn't hurt. And there's also the fact that you have people like Hermann Oberth, who was actually the mentor of Dr. Werner von Braun, the physicist behind von Braun's engineering.
For those who don't know, Viktor Schauberger was to water what Nikola Tesla was to electricity. He was a recognized genius, known as the water wizard. But what was his wellspring and source of genius? This is what he had to say on the subject, and I quote, "Already, from earliest childhood, it was my deepest wish to understand nature, and through this come closer to the truth I could not find at school or church. I was repeatedly drawn to the forest, where I could watch the flow of water for hours on end without getting tired or irritable. At this time, I did not yet know the water is the bearer of life, or the source of what we call consciousness. Totally oblivious, I let the water flow past my searching eyes, and only years later did I become aware that this running water attracts our consciousness magnetically, takes a piece with it, with a force that is so strong that one loses consciousness for a while, and involuntarily falls into a deep sleep. And so gradually, I began to play with these forces in water, and I gave up this so-called free consciousness, and left it to the water for a while. Little by little, this game turned into a very serious matter, because I saw that it was possible to release my own consciousness from my body and attach it to the water. When I took it back again, the consciousness borrowed from the water told me things that were often very strange. And so the searcher became a researcher who could send his consciousness on expeditions, so to speak. And this way I found out about things the rest of mankind has missed, because they do not know that people are able to send their free consciousness everywhere, even where the seeing eye cannot look. This so-called sight practice with blindfolded eyes finally gave me ties to the secrets of nature, which I slowly began to recognize and understand in their own fabric. And in due course it became clear to me that we human beings are used to seeing everything backwards and wrong. The biggest surprise, however, was that we human beings let our most valuable part drain off as useless, and from all the great intellectuality.
Here are the facts. The actions of the Nazi Party were erratic, ruthless, and bizarre. It's no wonder the group has become one of the conspiracy world's favorite boogeymen. After its defeat in World War II, the Nazi Party collapsed and the conspiracy tales began. People swore, for example, that Adolf Hitler survived the war, or that the Nazis had help from international bankers. Perhaps one of the most fascinating theories is that the Nazi Party had secret, advanced technology, years or even decades ahead of the Allied forces. It sounds like science fiction, but could it be true? We know the Nazis created the V-2 rocket, the world's first ballistic missile. We also know the US created Operation Paperclip to smuggle Nazi scientists into America, sparing their lives in exchange for their talents with rockets. But how advanced was Germany, really? After all, they didn't win the war. The Allies scoured every known research facility after the conflict and reportedly found no special technology. Is it possible that they missed something? Absolutely not, say conspiracists. They believe the US discovered all, or at least most, of the experimental Nazi technology shortly after the end of World War II. The problem is they kept it. Here's where it gets crazy. Conspiracy theorists like Jim Marrs believe that the US discovered highly advanced Nazi machines. But what kind of technology exactly? In the SS Brotherhood of the Bell, Joseph P. Farrell alleges that Nazi scientists discovered new ways to create airborne vehicles using a gigantic top-secret device called the Bell. This device was supposedly capable of vertical takeoff and powered by mercury, radiation, or electricity. Farrell believes the scientists were also working with stealth fighters and disc-shaped aerial vehicles. To conspiracists, Operation Paperclip proves that the US found something and needed help to make it work. This isn't an unreasonable idea. After all, Nazi scientists and siblings Raymar and Walter Horten built a German stealth fighter known as the Horten HO-229 in the 1940s. This revolutionary fixed-wing aircraft was captured by the Allies at the close of the war, and it was years ahead of any Allied plane. The Horten was built of wood and had a special coating to foil Allied radar. It also had recessed engine turbines and superior maneuverability. In the field, this fighter would be nearly invisible, at least until the bombs dropped. The Horten brothers had been working feverishly toward creating a game-changing piece of equipment, mainly in the fields of aviation and rocketry. If this vehicle had been mass-produced, the Second World War might have had a very different ending. Given that the US has, on at least one occasion, found experimental Nazi weaponry, many conspiracy theorists build the case further. They allege that the spate of UFOs reported in post-war North and South America were actually craft built by escaped Nazis, and that the US government began the alien scare as a false.
Newly released documents and deathbed confessions from scientists involved in top-secret Nazi development paints a picture of a race to develop a supercraft, codenamed Die Glocke, or the Bell, which would have changed the face of history forever. In fact, the idea of the Nazis developing a flying saucer wasn't such a crazy idea at all. They had for years been at the cutting edge of aircraft design, with early prototypes for vertical takeoff jets and even fixed wing and stealth technology.
German engineers were, and still are, among the very best in the world. If they set their hearts and minds on developing, whether it was an aircraft or a submarine, or anything new and unusual and superior to what they considered to be their opponents, then I believe it was within their capabilities that there were some very strange, very unusual, experimental Nazi aircraft in the air before the war ended.
All indications are that Nazis were ahead of all of the Allied nations in terms of technology. First-hand accounts tell us that from as early as the 20s and 30s, their technology far outstripped anything else on the planet.